Hello, my name is Matthias Schmidt, and in the coming presentations, we're going to discover the typical taste characteristics of non-European wines and some new grape varieties with a certain specific characteristic, which is making them robust against many molds that we know or diseases that we know. So to start with, here you get an overview about certain varieties we're going to come along. Maybe you have heard about some of them, whereas some of them are maybe not familiar to you yet. But we're starting first of all with a definition. So hybrids in general mean that we have a crossing between the common European Vitis vinifera wines that we know as typical varieties when it comes about wine production, and across with some American, Asian, or other species of vitis. And this is actually man-made due to the fact that we had a big challenge coming to Europe 150 years ago approximately, which is called phylloxera. And phylloxera actually destroyed huge plantations, huge amounts of vineyards were just basically destroyed. And one of the first solutions was creating varieties that are resistant against phylloxera, which is nowadays achieved by using specific rootstocks. But hybrids delivered some other advantages, but also some disadvantages. And yeah, many breeds were done in that time to make the plant a bit more resistant against also some other problems, which are, for example, blight, rot, mildew, severe winter temperatures. So also making it possible to do viticulture in more continental climates and furthermore drought. Another term which is more commonly used nowadays is the term fungal resistant variety or PIWI, coming from the German term pilzwiderstandsfähig, that are so-called interspecific hybrids with a high resistance to fungi, with the majority of the genome nevertheless coming from Vitis vinifera. So in general, more than 95% of the DNA is Vitis vinifera, and just a small part of the DNA is coming from the non-vinifera breeding partner. So in the latest generation of those new varieties, there are several back crosses done so that the genetic inheritance of Vitis vinifera exceeds 99%. So we have all the positive characteristics from common Vitis vinifera varieties and just a very small part of the DNA of a non-Vitis vinifera variety, but that defines the resistance against molds and mildew and other problems. In Europe, hybrids were not widely accepted because the flavors, the tannin structure, the acid structure of Vitis vinifera are more favorable than hybrids, which are often thought to produce simpler wines with musky or foxy aromas and flavors. So just not what the market wants. Hybrids are banned from Europe in terms of commercial wine production. And that's still the case. Because of hybrids could offer high volumes at lower prices. They were initially used for bulk up, low price wines. In some areas also kind of traditionally grown house wine in the garden. Today, less than 5% of the vineyards surface globally are planted with hybrids. The next challenge is to find maybe a suitable marketing strategy for that. Foxy aromatic descriptors are often associated with Vitis lambrusca and some other herbaceous aroma with Vitis riparia. Talking about PIWI varieties or the fungal resistant varieties, there you have to mention that their importance is increasing very, very strongly for many reasons. So the political pressure, the social pressure is rising on the industry. So to reduce spraying and the use of pesticides has to be reduced, not just the number of applications. For example, France aims to reduce in total 50% of the pesticide use, including viticulture, which is by number one of the most important branches in agriculture when it comes to spraying. And to the left-hand side, we see a picture that should also show that even though they are meant to be resistant, they are not completely immune. Johanniter, Regent, Cabernet Blanc, some bit older or earlier generation fungal resistant varieties, they are not completely resistant. Whereas some more modern or newer breeds in terms of fungal resistant varieties, they tend to get even higher resistance against mildew and other fungal diseases that we know from viticulture. So spraying is not reduced to zero, but it can be severely be reduced. In the following slides, I will now give you some examples of some commonly used hybrids, even though they are not allowed to be used in terms of commercial wine production in Europe. They still have a certain importance when it comes to countries like the US or like Brazil and some others. So I'm starting with Cabernet Dore. It's a white variety created in 2001 in California at UC Davis. It's a result of the cross between Cabernet Sauvignon and Norton. It's mainly located in the Midwest of the US and is resistant to winter frost and fungal diseases. So especially in the Midwest, where you see severe drop in winter temperatures of more than minus 20 degrees Celsius, that would kill a normal Vitis vinifera vine. Its characteristics are similar to its green-skinned grandparent, Cabernet Sauvignon, with a creamier texture and more floral notes like muscat or semillon and prominent pear aromas. It ripens very late with high sugar and total acid contents possible. Cayuga is another hybrid variety created in 1945 at Cornell University in the US. It's a cross between Seyval Blanc and Schuiller. The wine is winter hard and generally quite resistant against fungal diseases. There are many different flavors associated with that variety. Cayuga, when it's picked early, it can produce sparkling wines with a good acidity structure. Pleasant flavors also including it. When it's picked while achieving more ripeness, it can be made into clean, floral, fruity, dry or semi-dry wines that have a medium body or medium structure. Chardonel, it was created in 1953 at Cornell University, also in America. It's a crossing between Chardonnay, as you can read from the name, and Seyval Blanc. It is similar to Chardonnay and maintains a certain distinctive acidity. The wines have an amber color, so a bit higher in color compared to other whites. They are usually dry, fruity, and full-bodied. Some sparkling wines can be produced out of it due to its bright, balanced acidity and notes of green apple and citrus notes. It can also be aged in oak, while pointing out notes of butter coming from malolactic fermentation, spice, and earthy flavors. The next hybrid variety that we're talking about, it's La Crescent. It's developed by the University of Minnesota. It's one of the most frost-resistant grapes. It's named after a small town in Minnesota in the US. The grape has a high sugar and acidity level. It's often used for sweet or semi-sweet wines due to that, with stone fruit aromas like apricots, peaches, but also citrus and other tropical aromas. On the other hand, it can also produce dry wines. It lacks the foxy aromas associated with Vitis lambrusca and herbaceous aromas associated with Vitis riparia. Seyval Blanc, an older hybrid, it was developed in France. So even though those hybrids are banned from wine production in Europe, many of them have been breeded in Europe, as mentioned before, as reaction towards phylloxera, also as a first kind of strategy against phylloxera. It's a cross between Seyval 5656 and Regent Dore. The grape is popular nowadays in Canada, in the American Midwest, in the state of New York, and even in England, where it's commonly planted into sparkling wines. It produces fresh, crisp wines with ripe, attractive citrus, peach, and grassy aroma, and is often oaked and subjected to a stage of malolactic fermentation. So here even some aromas typical for what we know for Californian Chardonnays, buttery, oaky notes. Vidal Blanc, it's a further variety that was developed in France. It's a cross between Uni Blanc, widely spread white variety, and Seyval. It is growing widely around the Finger Lakes in the US and Canada, where the thick-skinned grapes are used to make ice wines, and it's also used to make dry wines. It's a crisp wine without wood aging usually, pointing out floral and resinous notes, including flavors of pineapple, grapefruit, melon, even hazelnuts, pears, and orange blossoms. It has high acidity levels, so residual sugar is sometimes used in terms of balance. A further hybrid variety is Catawba, originating somewhere along the east coast of the US. It is the likely cross of Semillon and some unknown Vitis lambrusca variety. It's marked for its really pronounced foxy or musky aroma. The variety played an important role in the early American wine growing, but it's fallen out of favor as more favorable hybrids have been discovered. It also has a clonal mutation, the pink Catawba, which is used to make rosé with sweeter or more sweetness and lower acidity as well. Chambourcin is another hybrid variety developed in France. The exact parents are not known. It's considered to be one of the best French-American hybrids. It's furthermore a Tintoret variety. Tintoret varieties mean that the pulp of the berry is already so rich in anthocyanins that you can press the juice immediately and you have all the red color. So you do not need to make a a maceration or fermentation on the skin. It is nowadays more available in the US and Australia than initially in France. It is often higher in tannins than other hybrids, typically with high acidity and strong flavors that can be completed with oak aging. The wines are often in a certain way spicy with blackberry and plum flavors, and a range of herbal characteristics like cress or pepper notes. Concord is also a cultivar derived from a hybrid blend. So the variety Concord is a cultivar derived from the grape species Vitis lambrusca, so not a direct breed. It is the most planted grape in the state of New York, but is used more for juice production or flavoring than actually producing wine out of it. The grapes are actually containing less sugar than other varieties, have on the other hand a higher acidity than other wine grapes. Most elaborated wines are made in a dry style, reminiscent of the flavor of grape juice or grape soda, simple and appealing in its sweet, grapey profile. So a really kind of simple wine. They are also known for having what is typically a foxy note. Norton, a further hybrid variety, first cultivated in Richmond in Virginia in the US. The DNA is consistent with Norton being a hybrid with an ancestry including Vitis aestivalis and Vitis vinifera. It has a deep purple color, medium to full body, and medium to high acidity levels. The tannin structure ranges from silky smooth to rough, bit depending on the way of winemaking here. Aromas of red and black fruits with a hint of coffee and chocolate, with a range of flavors including raspberry, cherry, pomegranate, blackberry, blackcurrant, and plum, also along with some spicy notes. Baco Noir is also a hybrid variety that was developed first of all in France. It's a cross between Vitis riparia and Vol Blanche. It's still grown in some extent in Burgundy and the Loire Valley and in the eastern part of the US. It has a certain high level of acidity. It also has great aging potential. It has aromatic flavor elements such as cedar wood, tobacco, leather, and chocolate, and fruit flavors of black cherries, blackberries, and prunes. Further, it can have some herbal notes of black pepper, licorice, cinnamon, and eucalyptus. So a bit out of the box from what we know from common varieties cultivated in Europe nowadays. In the following video, we are now talking about the major fungal resistant or PIWI varieties. They are in general here in Europe of a growing importance, and especially the awareness for those varieties is constantly increasing. Maybe you are not coming along about single variety wines of them but some of them are really interesting also when it is about being a blending partner. We're starting with Solaris. It's an older breed. It was developed by the University of Minnesota. The parents are the varieties Merzling and GM 6493, a breed from Geisenheim that did not make it to the market with even a proper name. And then, it's an early ripening variety with a good resistance against fungal diseases and frost. So you find it in, cooler, quite challenging climates, widely grown, or for example in Great Britain, but also quite interesting when it is about viticulture in northern Germany and even Scandinavia. The wines have a fruity flavor with notes of currant, citrus, elderflower, usually a high acidity coming along with it. It is suitable for dessert wines. It matures with a very, very high sugar level. In cooler climates, it can also produce light and fresh dry wines with lower sugar levels in that case. Muscaris is a variety that was developed in Germany at the Institute or the State Wine Institute of Freiburg. It is a cross from the varieties Solaris and Gelber Muscatella. So it has some muscat in it, not just in the name, also in the DNA. They must have medium levels of acidity with medium high levels of sugars. So if you let it ripen in warmer spots, it can accumulate quite high sugar levels. The wines are characterized by exotic fruit nuances with mango, lychee, citrus notes. Depending on the level of ripeness, also floral aromas with a slightly noisy aftertaste. It's well suited for dessert wines that have a certain muscat flavor. It has in general an early ripening character. A variety quite interesting is Voltis. Voltis was developed in a kind of cooperation between the French INRA and the German Julius Kühn Institute in Germany. It's a breeding between Villaris and a variety called VRH 3159-2-12. The vine is characterized by a total resistance to powdery mildew and a very high resistance to downy mildew. Voltis is allowed for producing champagne wines on a 10-year trial basis. So since 2022, it can be planted there on not more than 5% of the vineyard area of any estate, and it is not allowed to make more than 10% of the final cuvée for champagne. Experimental champagnes containing a small amount of Voltis in general scored better than traditional champagnes in blind tasting conducted by the INRA. There is so far not much information available about the descriptive profile of that variety as a single vine, but the fact that Champagne adopted a fungal resistant variety being officially used in its AOC sounds or shows how much pressure there is on the industry to find strategies reducing the amount of spraying, and there is a certain will also for change. So I think there is way more to discover from this variety in the next years. Coming now to a red fungal resistant variety called Cabernet Mitos. It was developed in Germany by the LVWO in Weinsberg. In Germany, it is a cross between Blaufränkisch and Tentori variety called Tentori du Cher, mainly grown in Germany, but also in small areas in Switzerland. It has some similarities to Cabernet Sauvignon in terms of flavor. So not just in terms of the name, also a bit in terms of flavor. It is suitable for aging in barrels, so it can adopt quite good oak notes. But as it is also a Tentori variety, it's quite rich in anthocyanins. It can also be used for blending. Other varieties that maybe lack a bit of color, sometimes not that ripe Pinot Noirs, also get a benefit in terms of color from such a variety. It has aromas of blackberries and plucked currants, dark chocolate, pepper, bell pepper, and vanilla, while it is aged in oak barrels. The red variety Regent was breeded by the Julius Kühn Institute or Geiweiler in Germany. It is a cross between the variety Diana with Chambourcin, and it is very resistant against frosts, but also to downy mildew, powdery mildew, and botrytis. With 1,600 hectares, it's Germany's most cultivated fungal resistant variety, but it's also grown in the UK, in Switzerland, in Belgium, in the Netherlands. The wines are in general full-bodied with an intensive red color. The acidity nevertheless is moderate. It has high levels of tannins that show aromas of green peppers, cherries, raspberry, cranberry, and black currants. And they can often reach quite high alcohol levels. And it's also suitable in that case for being aged in oak barrel. We are now coming to an end. This was just a small overview about the world of fungal resistant varieties or PIWI varieties and maybe their ancestors, the hybrid varieties. But this is for sure the topic. Fungal resistant varieties will play a role of growing importance, and it will be quite interesting to discover in the future what further wines and what further varieties in terms of fungal resistance we can discover. Thank you very much.